This house was much, much larger than the other two houses on the block. The reason being was that it was owned by the person who built it. This was a successful builder in the locality, and that was what he did. He built houses for his life work. And finally, his last house, where he was going to retire to, where his family were going to live, was this house here. So it was the epitome of his structural ability. He bought the plot, put in two houses on the plot that were average size but luxurious at the same time, and then he had an extra wide thatch house for himself. So you can see the contrast there, and the quality of these houses was just amazing, and he did a really nice job on them. And they're unusual because they're not Victorian and they're not Edwardian. They're neither one or the other. And I think London's full of different houses and interesting houses, but I think this has got to be one of the most interesting and unique houses, certainly in the Clapham area. Okay, so here we have the side of the house. The door was on the side of the house, and it was very, very complicated for people because you'd say you lived on 88 West Side, which is the road that runs along here, and in fact the entrance is on Waycross Road. You can see all the different windows there, and Barnaby's just locked out everyone from the house, which used to happen an awful lot. The side door here was always open, and it just had a brick against it, and people would open up, push hard on the side door, and the back door was never locked. People talk about a time in London when the back door was never locked. That for us was until 1979, 1980 maybe. We would never shut the door. The back door was always open, and we never had any problems at any time. The house was bought in 1952. The house had been up for 52 years. It was built in 1904. My parents moved in 1952. My mother bought the house for £8,000. For £12,000, and the British Medical Association gave her a grant of £8,000 to buy the house. So it was just £6,000 to buy the house, and she wanted to fill it with children, and that's exactly what she did. Take your mind back to 1952. A Jaguar or a Rolls Royce sweeps into the garage and parks. Nice space, looking a bit tired now. This garage has been through the family. Anton with his spray paint, spelling out Norton, a name that you most probably don't even know about, the Norton motorcycle. He would keep his tools in here, in the wooden cabinet, and work away. I remember getting an electric shock from this when it finally gave out. There's a plug socket there, and a little red light warned you that the electricity was on, so you had to be very careful about putting your fingers in the sockets, because you could get a very, very nasty electric shock. And then we'll take you inside and have a look at the rest of the house. But this would have been the first point of contact for many people who visited the house. My father was obsessed by cars, and the best cars, and he would want to take the people in, not through the front door, not through the back door, but through the garage. And we'll stop there and we'll take you through. My father and my mother were divorced, and my father, the only thing he left behind, he took the Rolls with him, but he left behind a Jaguar, and we had a wonderful time as children playing in this carport in a broken down old car. The tyres were flat, the sunroof was leaking, and here, this was our amazing playground for us. We were James Bond, we were Simon Templar, the Saint, we were all sorts of people, and we drove everywhere, literally everywhere. And the Jaguar was in the garage until we were well into our teens. We certainly didn't drive it then, but we got used to the feel of walnut trays and leather seating, and the smell of leather was absolutely fantastic. But it was just a big Jaguar playpen. Come through to the house, and we'll go past the benches. Come on through, mind the step as you come. This tree was an amazing place. The sun used to come in, and you can just see the sun playing on the leaves now. The sun used to come into the back garden, and this used to provide a shade for us. We would sit on these stone benches, and we would put the world to right during the afternoons. And then in the evening time, a round table would be rolled out of one of the rooms, set onto a stand, and chairs would be set around the table, and we would talk until midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning, all the time. And here, through these bars didn't used to be here, all the food would be passed back and forth from the larder and the scullery, all the wine, all the brandy, everything we needed to keep a conversation lubricated and interesting. But we'd be here until 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning in the summertime when it's warm. Come through the French windows and you can see where we also spent a lot of time eating. We're a family that ate a lot, and the family that eats together stays together apparently. So people would come in the back door and the first thing that they would come to would be the kitchen, and they'd have something to eat and something to drink. My mother was the most generous person, and anyone who came into the house would get something to eat and drink. And then they would end up at the top of the house in one of their bedrooms, or on the floor in their sitting room, one or the other. Very few people managed to leave the house on the day that they arrived, because they would have had too much to drink and too much to eat, and it just wouldn't be possible. But they'd escape the next day. It's not so much escape from cold, it's escape from Clapham. Being lazy people, we really liked the idea that we had a larder here, but we had the loo next door too, so we could actually live down here in the open space and never have to go upstairs at all, which is a real boon. So larder and loo, what more could you want? Lovely.
Open the door.
There we are. And nice tiled floors so that you didn't have to worry about the mess. There we are. Right, so this is inside and outside. The French windows always were open during the summer, just as they are now. And the sun, you can just see it's afternoon now. It's about 2 o'clock, and the sun is just filtering through here now. And in the evening, the sun would really light up this area, and the whole wall would become white with sun. It was absolutely terrific. Very shaded, very sheltered area. Ideal place for sitting out and talking and having a glass of wine. When my mother died, a friend of mine had left some claret behind, some very expensive wine, and I would sit out here with a book and a bottle of wine, and finish off the bottle of wine and then go to bed. Right, so we'll go inside and we'll just have a look at the 2 rooms at the front, and then that will really be the end of the tour, rather than the top of the house being the end of the tour. Here was our favourite room, because on a Sunday we were allowed to have our meal, our evening meal, not in the dining room, not in the kitchen, not on a table. There was a bergère sofa there, which we sat on. The television was over in the corner, over there. And we would sit, in fact we would kneel and eat our sandwiches, pretending that the sandwiches were communion, because we had gone to Mass on Sunday. My sister would hand out the quarters of sandwich. Sandwiches would be cut into quarters, and she would say, "Grubs up," and we would say, "Thank you." So instead of Body of Christ, Amen, we'd say, "Grubs up." But we'd all be kneeling down as though we were at the altar receiving our communion. This is the only heat that we used to have in the house, an old radiator, and the boiler is down in the cellar, and of course the boiler was broken. We didn't have the radiators, so we had to have fires with the little glowing bars that you have. Unfortunately, we couldn't afford to run the fires because my mother was left without any money, and so we would wrap ourselves in her fur coats and sit on the sofa in the corner. When a friend would come round, we would get 1 bar of the heater going, and they would be shivering in their seat, keeping their coat on, and we would be taking my mother's fur coats off us because we were boiling hot. So we had to take the coats off us, and we were sweating away with 1 bar on the heater. And this friend who'd come round, condensation was coming out of their mouths. They were shaking, and they never stayed that long. Come on through to the lift shaft. This is an amazing feature of the house. Hello, Auntie. open this door and you find yourself in the lift shaft. There you go. The only house I know that has a lift shaft that is in fact a cupboard. A friend of my mother's got very drunk one night and she went to collect her coat from the coat cupboard and she fell down onto the floor, bringing with her a pile of coats. She was buried underneath and all we could hear from inside the cupboard was the cry, "Joe, Joe, help me, I've fallen down the lift shaft." So from now on the cupboard became the lift shaft. So there you go, one of the family watchwords. So I'm closing the lift shaft and we're going to go down to the cellar to have a look at where I used to dig coal. I used to be a bit of a miner in my miner days. When I was a miner, I did some mining. Come with me through here. Right. The Aga was a greedy thing. It needed to be fed all the time with coal. And so we had to go down to the cellar in the old days and dig up coal on a daily basis to keep the hungry Aga fueled and hot. It did all our hot water and all our heating, so it had an awful lot of work to do. Come down to the cellar. See where. Yeah, as you come down the cellar, you'll see these shelves on the side. You might want to stop and pause. This is where all the chemicals and all the medicines were kept by your grandmother, who was an apothecary. That is, she made her own medicines. And the company that they first started, your grandparents, was called Trinity Pharmacy. And they had 3 chemist shops in the Wandsworth area. And all the chemicals were stored here. Come down into the cellar, you can see the old boiler here, which was used to heat the water way before our time. We never even used this boiler. It was a rusty old bundle of metal even in those days. But we did have one job to do, and that was to come through here in our slippers. Sometimes we'd wear our pyjamas, come through the cellar. The ceiling seemed so very tall when you were about this small, about 4 years old. I'd come through with my brother Anton, and we come through into this dark room, and we were very scared of the spiders and various other things, but we come down on our own because we were very grown up, or we thought we were, at 4 and 6, and there would be a pile of coal. You can just see here the pile of coal is left behind this dark patch, and we come through this chute here that's been netted up. And we would have 2 small shovels and a small bucket, and we'd make our contribution to bringing the coal up to the house and make our contribution to keeping the house going. So even from an early age we were encouraged to participate and take part. So we were Stone Age men living in Clapham. The miners. The kitchen was the heart of the house. Where this pile of boxes is, was the kitchen table, and the kitchen table was where we had all our meals, breakfast, lunch and supper. It was the heart of the house. And the reason being was that we had an old yellow coal-fired Aga that would keep us warm. And we also knew that there wouldn't be too much of a draft coming in through this big window here, because it was above our level, so we wouldn't get too much of a draft. And there was a double doors over there in the kitchen. There's 2 doors to seal in the heat between that. And this was where the boiler was. There's still a boiler there, but we had slats in here and what you call an airing cupboard. And all our clothes would be very, very warm. And I can remember coming down in the winter time, and Nora Wilts, who used to get us ready for school because my mother was working, Nora Wilts would be get me to sit down, and I would have to put my clothes on here, and she would sit me down in a chair by the kitchen table. I'd have some porridge, and then she'd go to the airing cupboard, and she'd get out some very warm clothes and put them on me. This picture here is an amazing piece of work that my sister Georgina did when she was 14. It was raining one day, and she just asked my mother whether she could paint the walls. And being my mother, she said she could. And Anton went to Australia, and he went to see some clairvoyant of some sort. And the clairvoyant said, "I see a man with ginger hair and a beard, and he's looking after you all." And it wasn't until Anton came back he actually made the connection between the picture here and what the clairvoyant was talking about. So there you go, life imitating art, some sort of connection. He has a benign face, I think. He looks almost Indian in appearance, so perhaps he could well be the spirit of the house, 88 being a very auspicious number in China. If you spin round, you can see the servants' bells here, and we've got the front door, the tradesman's entrance, which is at the back there, the drawing room, the dining room, the morning room, the bathroom, and bedrooms 1, 2, 3, 4. So that would be 4 of the bedrooms would be used by the householders, and the other 3 bedrooms would be used by the servants of the house. So clearly a house that was owned by some wealthy people, as is testified by the white tiles here, and the double door here, and the beautiful finishing. This is all original. The original door handles. There's a little hole even that they've gouged out, so that the door will be flush, and it's white on one side, brown on the other. Servants one side, the owners of the house on the other. Shall we go through? If you have a look at the Aga, it's quite a modern Aga actually. It's the 1970s, and Agas haven't changed much in their design. However, the yellow Aga that was here before was very, very temperamental, and you used to actually have the fire in here. The coal would go in the top, so you would lift up this plate with some hooks. You had metal rods with hooks on it. Lift off the plate, put it to one side, pour the coal in, and there would be ash at the bottom, and you would have to rake out the ash every single day and put it into a bucket. And there would be literally a 5 buckets worth of ash every single day from the coal that the Aga would burn. This is a gas-fired one, so it's much more efficient. And it kept us warm. The ceiling of this part here is actually decorated in terrible wallpaper because my elder sisters were having a bath, and they were playing upstairs having a bath, and they let the water run, and the whole ceiling caved in. And my mother needed to get the job done quickly because she was working, and the man came along and said, "I've only got this wallpaper, will you take it?" And she said, "Well, as long as I can have the ceiling back on my kitchen and not have water coming through from the bathroom, I'll be happy." So it rained on the Aga, but that explains the rather sort of 60s ghastly pattern, which I presume he thought was quite trendy. My mother thought it was awful, and we were encouraged never to look up if we could avoid it. Originality is the key of this house, I think, and part of its charm. This was my favourite place because it was a larder, and not many people had larders in their homes. The larder lived here, in this block here of tiling, and this is the scullery. This is where all the hard work was done. This was basically where you had your mangle and your washing woman with her board, her washboard, doing all the washing. When my parents moved in, they put every mod con you could think of in here. Dishwasher, washing machine, everything. Every labour saving device that was available on the market, top of the range, my parents had. When they got divorced, we went back to using the 2 sinks. But this is what they call a dainty made set, and it's very 1950s. So it was one of the first and only things that went into the house, the little dainty maid, and I suppose she was a bit dainty for those days, but for St Eunice these days. She's a bit large, I would have said. So what was dainty then is large now. My next favourite place was this place here, and it's not just the slate, the black slate that's used, and the shelves. It was the fact that these were filled with food. Fiona and I would make large sandwiches, sort of Scooby snacks, all the time, and you could just help yourself to whatever you wanted from the larder. And it's a great place. It's still cool now. If you go in there on a summer's day, you will feel cool. And it's got fantastic netting there too. But that's all original. The window and all the netting, all the shelving. These guys who had this house had an immense amount eye for detail. And these supports here, even these are decorated. Even these are beyond the practical. So they used even the top things for their food. And if you think about it, that's the right thing to do. You've got to have the best food. So that was that. Right, so we bypass the lift shaft and we take the stairs, because we don't take the lifts, we take the stairs because it's healthier. These stained glass windows have survived people throwing things at them, they've survived all sorts. They're the Art Nouveau style, which is really, really terribly unusual for this time. Very, very modern. People would have been horrified, just like they see a modern building and are horrified by that. They think these were ghastly. They're not beautiful or pretty like Victorian stained glass flower windows were meant to be. They're almost like triffids, almost sort of alien-like. One time my mother was completely broke and she didn't think she'd have enough money for the collection on Sunday, and someone squeezed a 5-shilling note through the gap in the window, and that enabled her to have enough money for the collection on a Sunday. So you come up the stairs, and that was the prayer that we used to say on our way up to bed. We didn't actually, but we normally used to nod to Jesus on our way up to bed, because that's what Catholic people do. And then these banisters, when I was small, they seemed so huge. And I remember coming to a point, maybe when I was about 10 or 11, thinking that I'd really grown up. Not only was I in double figures, but also the banister no longer seemed to be so large. It was a small dwarf sort of thing. I was bigger than that. We used to love this landing being up here, because it was a bit of space and you could spread out your cars and toys and everything like that, and we'd be having a lovely time. And also this was a very, very good place to hide during hide and seek, the cupboard under the stairs. And if someone found you there in the cupboard under the stairs, then you'd use the cupboard in the landing to hide in as well. So we had plenty of places to hide, and music played a lot in the house. So we don't mind Barnaby making music as we go around, because it's symbolic of the house. The banisters, I love the banisters here. The design is just absolutely amazing. The squareness, the clarity. Again, what makes this house unique is it's not Victorian and it's not Edwardian. It's between the two. It's got influences of both eras, both times. It's got the clean simplicity of an Edwardian house, and yet the wonderful, wonderful feeling of a old-fashioned house. It badly behaved, but because my mother had been moved upstairs as well. Here, on these stairs, we used to play with our cars, and we would send a car, we would send a car down there, and it would fly down onto the shelf, and then fall off onto the floor. And we would have two cars here, and we would race them down. My mother had a cage here because she was worried that we might fall out of this window here. So she kept that one open, but she locked the bottom ones. Because if you stand there, like that, this is a Michael Jackson moment, I'm holding you very tightly, that you could open that window and fall straight through, and nothing would stop you. So that's why we had that. Shh, one at a time.
A coach won't stop you.
Yes.
That's
Okay.
what it will do to babies.
So listen to this wind chime here. That was, we always knew it was a windy day because the wind chimes would go. Come in and have a look at the loo here with the cistern, old-fashioned cistern, the final flush. There you go. You don't get a flush like that anymore. Sometimes you have to give it a bit of encouragement when you go along. But there you go. And look, this is the original seat. There you go. They don't make them like that. It's actually not the original seat. It's a replacement for the wood. But again, the tiling is fantastic. This is my favourite place. Well, the loo was my favourite place. My second favourite place is the bathroom, because you've got this wonderful big bath. Fiona, Anton and I would all have our baths together in here, and you know, we can make as much mess as we like, because all the, well, that's a bit dusty, all the water would just roll off these beautiful tiles. And I know that the people who moved in here won't necessarily think that these tiles are particularly nice or will want to particularly keep them, and it's a bit of a shame really, because an awful lot of effort was put into creating these rooms, and it's all going to go. Never mind, what can you do? What can you do? This is marble here that the bath is set on, so this is a solid slab of marble, and my mother always said there's only one way you could get this bath out of here, and that would be through the window or smashing it up. So I think perhaps that this bath, not only is it original to the house, but I think it was put in before the wall was put in, or before the window was put in, because I think I'm right in saying that you actually wouldn't be able to get the bath through this narrow gap. So they might well have put the bath in as they were building the house. So you talk about original features, that's an original feature. This handle has lasted throughout the time, from Canning Town. This one actually hasn't, but I believe that that's the original bath, and this was a sink that my parents put in the 50s. It looks very much like a 50s adjunct design, and also it's got a label on here, so that gives it away slightly for any architectural historians trying to fob you off with the fact that it's a Victorian sink. It ain't. So we've only got another 6 rooms to go, and then the story of 88 West Side will be well and truly over. Leaving the bathroom onto the landing, where Barnaby's not picking his nose, we come to the loft, and we can't get into the loft unfortunately, but it's a very big space, and here, against this wall, your grandmother used to have her wardrobe.
We could open that thing.
Yes, we could go through into my parents' room, which I think is my favourite room in the whole house. The fireplace, I think, is superb. It's very, very simple. It's got the classical design on it. It's got the latticing there, and it's obviously the pink fireplace. This is a room, and you can see the marble as well. This is a room that the man who built this house built for his wife. It's obviously a woman's room. This is where his wife would get dressed in the morning. This would be her dressing room, and that sort of thing. And what I like about it is the height of the ceiling, the simplicity of the door with the brass plate on it. This brass plate is actually missing. This is new, but you can see the old one. The Mexican hat design there, and the key cover. But this brass plate is very, very simple for Victorian times, although it's got this lovely etching. Everything here is just beautifully, beautifully finished. And the other thing I like about this is the bells. One on the side for the husband, for what he wants, and one on the side for the wife for what she wants. And these are original. Now this will be thrown out by the new owners, but you can feel the Bakelite there, and these are wooden bells, and they're for the signalling downstairs, in the kitchen, for that box that we saw to let the servants know that their presence was required. Right, so this is this room, and I love the old candle fittings. These are obviously put in the 1950s, but they're not modern enough to detract from the old Victorian style. Then we go into the room where I threw myself out the window at a very early age. This was a spare bedroom. We never had anyone in here. And we use it as a bathroom. And it's got a loo in there, small loo. Just see that quickly.
Was it spare?
And it was a spare room, and this was where we kept all our linen. That's where we kept all the things for the bed, the blankets and the sheets and all sorts. Should we put you in there? Let's put you in there, blanket boy. There you go, you're a little blanket now. A little sheet, and we'll get you out when it gets cold. Good stuff. Come on, come out, you little boy. Ah, little blanket boy. There we are. And this was my mother's project. And I'm thinking here was the tanking. Well, in there, so this is the original ironing cupboard.
myself.
You might hurt yourself. These
But I might fall down the
I won't let you fall down. Come on, let's go and see where your grandmother used to live. And if you come here, actually, it's quite interesting because this is an original label from one of your grandmother's medicines. Because in those days, doctors used to make their own medicines.
Why?
Well, because there weren't chemist shops, and that is Trinity Pharmacy, and that's the first company that your grandmother and grandfather had.
Oh!
They came over here as doctors, and they started up their first company called Trinity Pharmacy.
But why did they stop us?
Why did they stop that? Well, your grandfather decided he wanted to go into pubs. So after having 3 chemist shops, he started to buy up pubs.
Can I do that?
You can. This is the old heater. Pull that, and a bar around there will start glowing. So that was the main light, and that would be the heater for the thing. Now, have a look down here, because ours is the tallest house in the street. Ours is the biggest house in the street. And we've got a flagpole there, and apparently, according to one of our neighbours, my father used to hoist the Irish flag on that flagpole.
And if you stop up, you will fall. 100 way down if you're stuck up the chimney.
That's right, and you can see down there the garage and the flat roof of the lean-to, and also the roof of the scullery and larder. So let David get in there and have a look at that if he wants to. The library, there used to be a very, very big bookcase over there. It's got a beautiful fireplace with blood red marble, and the bay window, and again the radiator with the caning on. And this will all go most probably. They might put a modern radiator behind that, but this is the old-fashioned radiator that they had, and they boxed it up very nicely. And you can see the gas lights. These are the inlets for the gas.
We have
And so there we have the whole house really. You might want to stand up onto the ceiling to have a look at the design on the top. And also the design over the doorway, which is quite interesting. And that's my drinks cabinet, and that's the only thing I'm taking away from here is my drinks cabinet.
Not true, there's quite a lot of stuff going up the loft. Quite a few boxes, don't forget that.
And here's a nice little soda bottle here, so we're off to have a whiskey and soda down the pub after this. So thank you very much for coming along on our journey. And Barnaby's on the video too, aren't you?
Yeah.
Barnaby, on the
David
DVD.
Roth.
So that's it. Thank you very much, David. That's great. We used to use an awful lot of this room here, which we called the breakfast room. It's called the morning room on the Bells. It's got a beautiful fireplace here, and you can see that we had a fire quite recently in here. Beautiful piece of wood. We had a huge dining room table, and we had lots and lots of fun, lots of dinner parties and people to stay. And there was a lovely picture there, which you can just see the outline of there. And basically, it's rather like the imprint that my mother left on this house. It's now very strong in there. It's faded away, but really, basically, she was the house. She fell in love with the house, and she wanted it to be an embodiment of herself. Hello, Scooter Boy. And this is lovely because it's got a balcony here. It's got one of the old-fashioned radiators in here. So I don't know whether this was put in Victorian time or later. That's a balcony. You can go, do you want to go out on the balcony? It's quite safe. Do you want to go out? Well, there you go. That's it. Yeah? Okay, good stuff. Lovely. Ha 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 ha. So this is great because you can just get out onto the balcony and it's a great place to hide. Well, just wait a bit. Patrick, again, there's no ornate fireplaces here, and this one's actually bricked up, as was the one in my mother's room. But you can see the blue tiles here, very simple. And Patrick painted this cupboard. He painted it purple, and in fact the whole room was purple at one stage. But even the hooks for the servants' clothes are good quality, solid stuff. Or maybe these are for later. Well, I don't think so. Here you go, have that. Have that. I'll tell you about your grandmother's bedroom, because this is amazing. Because it had no heating, it's still got no heating, so people who come and live here will have to get some central heating. But the bell there is there because this is where the servants used to live. And when they had people who worked for them in the house, that bell would ring and let the servants know that they were needed, so they had to go downstairs. And your mother would be in bed in the morning, and all 6 of us would get up in turn, and she'd be pushed out of her bed. Because one person would get in, she'd have to move over, another person would come in, she'd have to move over, another person would move in, and it's rather like there were 3 in the bed, and then everyone said, roll over, and your poor grandmother was the first one out of the bed. And she went down to make our breakfast then. Come through and see where Daddy used to sleep. This is Patrick's room. Your Uncle Pat this way if you've got rheumatism. Alex's left a bag in here. This is great. So this is the room where my mother died, where your grandmother died. This used to be Georgina's room. Gorgeous Gussie, as we used to call her. The fireplace here is just wonderful. I love the colours. I love the design on it. You know, this is real sort of high, sort of classic style, which the Victorians admired a lot. But at this stage, they'd gone beyond that classical style to the sort of flowery Morrison sort of thing. So when my mother was redecorating the room, she went for the sort of Morrison style wallpaper. These bars don't show you, but there is a flat roof out there, and this is where my sister used to sunbathe on a sunny day, and she would be out there with a book, lying on the flat roof, sunning herself, and we would often join her. So there'd be 3 or 4 of us on an inflated bed, a lie-low, and a couple of mattresses. Sometimes she'd take the mattress from her bed and take it through. Next door was my parents' room, and that is really my favourite room in the whole place. From my parents' room, it was a short walk to Fiona's room, and we called this the nursery because this is where we used to be when we were children. My parents would be next door, and this would be clearly where they keep the children under control. There's a nice little cupboard here for all the children's clothing and all that sort of thing. And here we have the fireplace where I think there was a fire kept going in the grate to keep us warm. My cot was here, and one of the bars of the cot worked its way out, or I worked it out. So the cot was turned around against the wall. One day I pushed the cot I was having a nap and I got up, I pushed the cot away from the wall, slid under the cot, climbed up onto this window shelf. The window was open, I presume it was summer, and I fell from this place down onto the floor, down into the garden, which was a drop of, I suppose, 12 feet, something like that. But I lived to tell the tale because I landed on my bottom, so I was fine. I landed on my nappy, and I walked round and banged furiously on the door of the surgery, and my mother let me in. Hello, Barnaby, we're doing a film for you about your granny's house. This is young Barnaby. How old are you, Barnaby? 3. Well, when I was about your age, when I was about your age, I fell out of this window.
Why?
And well, because I got out of my cot and I shouldn't have done, and I fell all the way down the stairs, all the way down, not down the stairs, but down the length of the stairs. So if you go down those stairs, you'll see how far I jumped or fell, one or the other. Let's go through to the last room, and this is where Anton and I used to sleep together when we were growing up.
He loves to turn around here.
Do. Good boy. Okay, come and see Anton and Daddy's room. This is where I used to sleep when I was a baby. And Anton decided he wanted to turn it into a pirate's cabin, into a captain's cabin. So he got this very, very cheap wallpaper that looked like wood. And he put it up all on his own. Anton was very, very good at making things. Very, very good at making things. And this is where we kept our clothes in the clothes cupboard here. But this fireplace is very, very simple because this was a fireplace for the servants. And it was very small. And if you go downstairs and have a look at the other fireplaces, they're much bigger because they were for the important people in the house, not the servants. And the servants just got a small fireplace and small lumps of coal. And there's a story called The Christmas Carol, and it's all about this man who gives a small amount of coal to the people who work with him, and he has all the coal that he wants on his fire so he can keep warm. There you go. So he's not very nice to the poor people.
Why?
He just wasn't.
Why?
Well, he wanted to stay warm himself, but he didn't want them to stay warm.